Cinema is one of the most potent art forms when it comes to sensory experiences. What other medium has been able to make you taste pot-au-feu, suffer from physical pain, feel the cold water or the scorching heat? Although it is only based on vision and hearing, much like theater, filmmakers have been able to simulate other senses through purely cinematic tools. One of the most common aims of such use is to elicit sexual desire. Eroticism has long been part of film history. One of the first movies arguably being Thomas Edison's The Kiss, released in 1896. Even during the most repressive era of American cinema under the Hays Code, which forbade any depiction of sexual acts, filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock found ways to circumvent the censorship through suggestion. It is after watching one of Hitchcock's films that Park Chan-Wook, a student in aesthetics philosophy, decided he wanted to become a filmmaker. Thanks to South Korea's democratization in 1987 and the relaxation of dictatorship-era censorship laws in 1996, the Korean New Wave emerged. Similarly to the post-Hays Code era in the United States, Korean movies increasingly depicted violence and sex as a show of freedom from authoritarian rules. Oldboy, Park Chan-wook's 2003 international breakthrough, is no exception, and neither is The Handmaiden, released in 2016. Adapted from Sarah Waters' novel, Fingersmith, it depicts queer sexuality as liberation from an oppressive patriarchal environment, a theme that echoes Korean artists' own experiences under strict conservative censorship, which may be why Park took an interest in the story. He readapted it to a Korean setting, under the Japanese colonial occupation. For context, a swindler hires a pickpocket, Suk-hee, to become maid to wealthy heiress Lady Hideko, so as to push her to marry him and steal her fortune. We'll dissect the scene where Suk-hee files Hideko's tooth down after she complained that it was too sharp. This scene is also present in the novel and the BBC TV adaptation. It is a turning point in the two characters' relationship. In Park's version, it is the audience's first introduction to any kind of sexual tension between them. It is important to note that viewers, especially in Korea, were not necessarily made aware of the queer aspect of the story. So this scene plays the role of a sexual awakening not only for the protagonists, but also for the audience. To this end, Park Chan-wook uses several stylistic strategies to place viewers in their perspectives, making us feel what they do through different senses. First, this scene takes place during the ladies' bath to make it more intimate in comparison to the original material. In film, the choice of setting determines the emotional core of the scene. Here, it is not only a moment of tenderness between the two, which is the case in the BBC adaptation, but clearly a moment of sexual awakening. The ladies' bathroom is a space in which only handmaidens are allowed, as they supposedly don't look at their lady's body with any sexual desire. This is why, at the beginning of this sequence, despite Hideko being naked, no intimate parts of her body are revealed on screen, since Suk-hee, in her handmaiden role, does not feel any desire for Hideko, so viewers shouldn't feel anything either. Conscious of the male gaze that has permeated film history, and of his point of view as a male filmmaker, Park knows that even if a woman's naked body were to be displayed in a non-sexual manner, many viewers will still sexualize it.
부장님이? 오늘?
The scene is set with this sweeping camera movement instead of cutting to a classic establishing shot. Here, the movement is unmotivated, so it stands out to viewers, making them conscious of the presence of the camera, of an auteur narrating the story. Park Chan-wook stands against the invisible style initiated by classical Hollywood movies, preferring instead an operatic approach. This is a subtle equivalent of a voiceover telling viewers, "Now, here is the time the handmaiden gave her lady a bath." This fits within the thematics of the film, which deal with subjective narration and points of view, rather than an objective reality.
목욕하라고 사줬구나.
저희 이모는요, 손님 오신다고 하면 먹던 숟가락도 놓고 애기씨를 씻겼대요. 손님이 애기한테서 좋은 냄새 난다고 그럴 때가 제일로 기뻤거든요.
This wider framing sets the scene. We immediately understand the relationship between the lady and the handmaiden through the staging. There is some distance between them as Suki stands at the other end of the bathtub. While they could have shown her rubbing Hideko with soap, Park instead shows her handling potions with different aromas. Despite the intimate setting, this is clearly a professional relationship. Viewers are prompted to connect to their sense of smell with the dialogue, and the colorful bottles of soaps and aromas. The steam coming from the bath is also a visual depiction of a smell floating in the air. It adds texture to the image, making it more tangible.
이모가 애기 씻길 때 사탕을 물리거든요. 목욕이 얼마나 달콤한지 가르쳐준다고. 왜 그러세요?
Now, with this close-up, Park conveys the sense of taste as Hideko sucks on the lollipop. This shot also highlights the inciting incident that will set the narrative of the scene into motion.
입안이 자꾸 베어. 이 하나가 뾰족한가 봐.
As Suki gets closer to Hideko, the camera dollies in, which indicates a change in the initial dynamic from a more distant relationship to a more intimate one. Then we go back to the close-up, and here it becomes clear that the lollipop was a setup. It prompted audiences to tune in to their sense of taste. Now, Park uses this sense to elicit unexpected erotic stimulation as viewers are meant to taste Suki's finger. Notice how Hideko's eyes are wet. This is a subtle cue that the pain is very tangible. This unmotivated camera movement highlights another change in the character's dynamic. Hideko has been in the spotlight from the start of the scene, the center of attention. But when she slowly opens her eyes, we shift perspective and focus on Suki's reaction instead. This movement also coincides with the start of the musical score, which introduces emotion into the scene. Park is telling us this is an important narrative beat. He is stepping out of a purely erotic zone by introducing this music, which adds a new layer to the scene. It's not only about sexual awakening through stimulation of the senses, but about emotional bonding. We hear this solo wind instrument, feebly calling out for help like a wounded animal, which the strings come in to support. The score mirrors Suki and Hideko's relationship, as she comes in to soothe her pain.
이 냄새였구나.
Voiceover is one of the most commonly used devices by Park Chan-Wook, as it effectively reminds viewers they're experiencing a specific point of view. Here Suki is narrating her experience. She prompts us to imagine a smell again. The sound of her breathing is boosted in the mix, which creates a sense of proximity. It also highlights her flustered reaction. She is taken by surprise by her own desire. Park pushes subjectivity to the furthest extent with this point of view shot, embracing Suki's gaze. So when Hideko looks at her, she looks directly at the camera. This soft breaking of the fourth wall usually makes viewers uncomfortable, as they feel watched by the character on screen. This aligns them with Suki's reaction, who is forced to lower her gaze, avoiding Hideko's stare. Also, the camera goes from smooth dolly to handheld movements. In order to highlight the subjective nature of the shot, Suki's reaction shots tighten into close-ups. Longer lenses are used to crush perspective and make the characters appear closer to each other with these over-the-shoulder framings. The sense of intimacy is at its peak. Naturally, with this intense game of looks, Suki's heartbeat would increase, and so does the pace of the editing, switching from a 12 seconds per shot average to a 2 seconds per shot average. This creates tension for viewers, not the scary kind, but a sexually charged one. This editing technique dilutes time by transforming a simple movement, looking down in response to a stare, into a series of shots that highlights the intensity of the moment. Upon closer observation, the action is not really continuous, as Hideko looks up twice, and Suki looks down several times in a row. But it doesn't matter. Continuity can be broken for emotional impact. Finally, the camera, still embracing Suki's gaze, tilts down to reveal Hideko's naked chest. The red flower petals floating on the water stand out against the color palette, which was dominated by blue and white tones. This color contrast highlights the erotic reveal, red being the color of passion and desire. Here, Park Chan-Wook uses nudity for a specific narrative purpose. We've never been exposed to it since the beginning of the film. because the protagonist has never had to deal with any kind of sexual desire. However, this reveal marks a turning point. It stimulates viewers who are sharing Suki's point of view, thus indicating that she is stimulated as well. This close-up, paired with her audible breathing, allows viewers to closely analyze her reaction. She is clearly flustered, and so are we, as we're invited so close to her we can even hear her swallowing. Hideko's reverse shot is just as intimate. With the long lens crushing the perspectives, it looks as though they're about to embrace. Park makes an unusual choice with this second dolly-out establishing shot. It's like restarting the scene. The score fades out as we settle on the two characters, still in the middle of the same action. This cutaway has the effect of an ellipsis for the audience. It implies a jump in time, so we assume the two have been sharing this intimate moment for quite a while. It also provides a break from the action that allows Park to transition from one perspective to another. This time, we are embracing Hideko's point of view. The music fades, and we fully delve into the sensorial erotic realm. In a sense, the structure of this scene reflects that of the movie itself, which breaks the narrative to switch points of view. This point of view shot highlights Hideko's subjective experience. Not only is it an extreme close-up, but the super shallow depth of field narrows the area of interest even further. Suki's mouth. We are reaching a level of abstraction that epitomizes a single idea, the eroticized sense of taste. This insert also epitomizes the sense of touch. The minimalist sound design accentuating only a few sounds in a fashion that echoes SMR, a pleasant sensory response to audio stimuli, immerses viewers in this erotic moment. The point of view editing, combining reaction shots and object shots, shows that it is Hideko's perspective we are embracing. It mirrors the earlier setup with Suki. Thus, Park tells viewers that this sexual awakening doesn't only happen for Suki, but for Hideko as well. It is a mutual experience, not a one-sided desire. When she looks up into the camera, audiences feel observed once again. Yet, here the camera doesn't move or cut away. We linger on Suki's stare, implying they are looking straight in each other's eyes. After initial avoidance, there is now an unspoken acknowledgement between the two, a newly formed connection.
매끈매끈해요.
The cut from extreme close-up to the wide shots implies an abrupt return to normal. Such a sudden transition creates an underlying feeling of willful ignorance. The characters are acting like nothing happened, and so is the camera with this wide shot. Look at the way Hideko suddenly turns her back to Suki. Yet this is not a true return to the former dynamic. The two are now much closer to each other than they were. They just don't admit it yet. In this scene, Park Chan-Wook places viewers in the protagonist's perspectives through several subjective stylistic devices in order to align them with their awakening sexual desire. He draws on cinema's potential. As a result, without needing a word of dialogue, the two characters' dynamic shifts from professional to intimate. There are so many works I'd like to explore with you, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. See you in the next one.